Welcome to Building Fortunes Radio. Make sure you check us out at buildingfortunesradio.com. Along with our marketing partners, we're here to help our PM Marketing Network Leads customers build their businesses and make the world a better place. At Building Fortunes, we know how much your business means to you and the people important to you. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world. Now on to our show with your host, Peter Mingils.
Hello, everyone. Peter Mingils here. You're listening to Building Fortunes Radio on www.buildingfortunesradio.com. And if you are here and you're listening in live, we certainly appreciate you being here. And, of course, we certainly appreciate you being alive. If you are here and you're still alive, you might be listening in on some of our archived radio shows. We archive all of our shows on buildingfortunesradio.com. And in this section, you'll find it either on MLM After Hours, or you'll find it on Building Fortunes Radio. You'll find it in one of several places. During the week, we have specific radio shows for some specific people, and you'll be able to find, for instance, Citizens for Health on the Citizens for Health it's actually citizens.org, but you'll find it on the Citizens for Health radio show segment. You'll hear the MLMIA After Hours stuff on MLM After Hours. You'll hear the Multi-Level Marketing International Association thing on that one. You'll hear people like Dr. Jerry Brown or Jody Bear or Billy Osment or other people as well on their respective radio shows as well. So we finished up 2015. 2016 is going to see an expanded lineup as well as some various topics as we're getting a lot of traction and attention on Building Fortunes Radio. Also, what many people are starting to do is they're realizing that we box our radio shows up. So if you think of like packaging them up into 30 or 60-minute spots, we then send them off to our friends who also run both internet and terrestrial radio shows. So if you're hearing us all over the place, it could be because we are all over the place. So we're interested in helping people build a fortune, whatever their mechanism might be. You could use these success principles and go out there and do many other things. So today on our radio show, on this one, what we usually talk about is what I call the potholes or the areas that we really have to watch out for. I am someone who wants to know the ropes. Like, what are the critical limiting factors? And for some people that may not understand my story, I grew up in direct sales, and I had a couple of angels, I'm just going to call them, save me on some occasions. I'll never forget specifically, and I still don't know who the man is today, but I was running a branch in New Hyde Park. I was a brand new branch manager. This is for a company called Electrolux. I had a newer sales guy who was a kid, and his first name was Joe, and I won't tell you his last name, but his first name was Joe, and Joe was a real good kid. And then all of a sudden, Joe came back with a lot of sales, and I was like, Joe, so what's going on? He says, well, I visited my family and friends and relatives and whatever. I was out there, and I really loved this product. He came back, and he grabbed the equipment, and he was there, and then he still worked with me for a little bit, and then he kind of went away. And then I got all those checks bounced back as fraudulent transactions. Actually, no, they weren't bounced back. They were actually cashed. And I started getting some phone calls from people saying, why'd you use my check? Why'd you use my check? Why'd you use my check? And I didn't know because I was a brand new branch manager. Well, I had an angel in Connecticut. Still don't know his name. He was a division manager. Says, Peter, I'll handle this for you. I still don't know his name. And he covered it for me, meaning he covered the issue. He got personally involved. He said, just stay out of it. You're kind of new and you're inexperienced. You don't know what's going on. And there was an angel that literally saved me thousands of dollars and maybe even my career there. So I learned early on, I got to learn the ropes. Like, I got to learn what the good guys do. I got to learn what the bad guys do. So I'm a good guy. I want to make sure I do the good stuff. I always believe that there's no strength in weakness. That was my phrase. There's no strength in weakness. But unfortunately, in our MLM world or the home-based business world, there's a lot of people that have found that either they go the easy way, which is to be weak, W-E-A-K, in this selling process, or they go the fraudulent way, because sometimes it appears as if it's easier to screw people than it is to work hard and do it the right way. So I have Building Fortunes Radio as a show where we can identify all of those things. Now, some of the issues are, mistakes that sometimes business people make, and some people say if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Well, that might be applicable sometimes. Sometimes if it doesn't kill you, it just weakens you out for the next blow. that will kill you, by the way. But there are some situations that really are life and death. And sometimes, based on how people handle their life or their finances or their time and attention, it could mean the difference between success and failure, and sometimes even life or death. So I ask people that can educate people on the good, the bad, and the ugly to join us on Building Fortunes Radio to kind of identify some of those issues. So this way, whether you have a guardian angel like I did my division manager in Connecticut, I still don't know who it was, help you out, or somebody that can get personally involved and educate you on where the potholes are and where all the the critical things are, and keep you maybe from jail or bankruptcy or death. And I say that sincerely. We do this radio show so we can create that platform. And I brought with us today a gentleman named Dave Ritchie. Dave Ritchie's got it's an interesting but a sad story. And I want him to share a little bit about it with you. And then you can always find more information on his story, because it really is a fascinating story, although it is really kind of sad. And I'll let him tell you why he does the things that he does, so I won't take that away from him. But I want to introduce to you Dave Ritchie on Building Fortunes Radio. So, David, first of all, thanks for being here. Second of all, it's just you and I today. Third is tell us a little bit about your story. And sometimes if you want to blend in even the life and the death and the success and failure, you can blend that in as well as the reasons why you do what you do.
Okay, Peter. Thank you for having me on your show, and thank you for the public service you're providing to people that are interested in home-based businesses. As you know, I'm not terribly long-winded, although I would like to be sometimes. So a little guidance with some questions would probably help focus my comments.
No problem. Well, let's take a little bit of time with you. So you got started doing what you do for a specific reason, and the passion by which you pursue it is to try to at least educate and maybe even prevent those that want to be prevented from having some of the same expensive and both expensive as far as money, finances, and even life or death experiences. Let's tell people then a little bit about your background.
Well, I spent eight and a half years with a domestic partner whose dream was to build an MLM business that was successful and lucrative. Interestingly, the first company she was involved with was considered one of the best of the best. They're still a member in good standing of the DSA. They're a publicly held corporation and market primarily wellness products. Anyway, during the course of our time together, despite her best efforts in being an award-winning recruiter for a legitimate charity, she just couldn't make money. In fact, the 1 year for which I still have an income statement, which was 2007, she lost sustained net losses of $49,000 from her efforts.
For the year. So she worked it like crazy, giving it everything she got.
Yep.
And still lost $49,000.
She lived, breathed, talked, wore the business around the clock. Even some of her nightwear was from the company. So over the course of our time together, I estimate that she lost about $165,000. If I include the 3.5 years she was involved in MLM before then, and the time since I left, I would guess she's lost $250,000 or more. And
that's not taking into consideration the amount of money she would have made if she were doing almost anything else. So if she was doing something that was working out, she probably would have tripled whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, the losses are just the monetary losses. But if you take a look at what she would have made by working anywhere else with that same determination, it could be 3, 4, 5, 10 times that amount as far as an income stream.
Exactly. The opportunity costs of pursuing this business aren't factored in.
Right. Okay, so and you saw a lot in her as well. She was successful somewhere else. We all know there's no guarantee towards running any kind of a business, but there were some specific issues, I'm sure, that were related to why in the world she went so far upside down, when realistically speaking, I mean, to get started in a home-based business should be a couple of $100, and if you're buying the product and using it yourself, maybe only a couple of $100. How in the world can you go about losing $49,000 in a year? Like it's almost if you really think it through, it's almost impossible. That means she had to have a lot of add-ons to her losses because she did what?
Well, there were several things that came into play. One is there's a myth out there that people are drawn into this business out of greed. That certainly wasn't the case with my ex. She was probably as gentle and caring a person as I've ever known. She was also the valedictorian of her high school graduating class, so she wasn't stupid, but she was credulous. And that resulted in her buying into just about everything she read. In fact, she used to put advertisements in front of me and think that they were intended to be objectively informative, and not realizing that there was a vested interest in selling whatever it is she was urging me to buy.
Got it. Okay, good. All right. So then so that was part of it. Then let's go through the let's say the demise of the relationship, and then also some of the unintended consequences and tragic ones as well. Meaning what happened with herself and her son.
Sure. There were a lot of reasons that the relationship didn't work out. I think we were both motivated to make it happen, but we each brought baggage from our past marriages that impacted our relationship. But I think the core problem we had was that I realized not only that she was losing a tremendous amount of money, and it was also costing me, but I also realized that we were promoting something that was very predatory, and my conscience wouldn't permit me to continue. And given that the predatory practices and acts were taking place in our home, I couldn't stay in the home anymore, and that's ultimately why I left. So
when we speak about predatory, you're not talking about Bill Cosby alleged predatory. You're talking about, that to me, that's one level of predatory. So, the whole Bill Cosby allegation, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about business predatory. So explain that.
That's correct. Deceptive income claims, blinded recruitment, false medical claims for the products. Those were the sorts of things that I just couldn't live with anymore. There is a documented link between multi-level marketing companies and self-help and prosperity cults. And my ex got involved with one of those self-help cults at a cost of $12,000. And what she got out of it was basically complete abandonment of her previously held values. Unfortunately, she got her 17-year-old son involved with the same cult, and he, just before I left, he was diagnosed with high-functioning schizophrenia. And while this particular cult screened people on their word that they were not under treatment for any psychoses, he had been involved 4 years earlier, so they didn't screen him again. And it was during that intervening time that he was diagnosed. Anyway, he was asked to help with one of the cult's initial seminars. And he, you'll have to pardon me if I get a little emotional here. He helped with that seminar. And during the course of the seminar, which was about 4 days, he had a psychotic break. Well, nobody there was a qualified mental health professional. The program was not monitored by a qualified mental health professional. So no one recognized that he was having a psychotic break. 2 days after he returned home from the seminar, he took his own life. And I think that's probably the primary motivating factor for my activism against MLM fraud, and certainly the primary source of my passion.
So I'm going to kind of explain it using similar but somewhat words that a lot of people in our industry would kind of understand. You know, sometimes they say this is really like a self-development industry. You know, this is all about self-development. So there are some legitimate courses and legitimate people that train on self-development. They teach, you know, sales, or like, for instance, we teach a lot of stuff on selling and motivation and things along that line. And then you have some courses that really do go into, again, it almost should be like they are not licensed to do the things that they do. And there's several of them, and I could mention them by name, but I won't, that, you know, you get in for the first session, and it's really good. It's sometimes either a free session or $500, and it is really good. Like, I'm sincerely saying really good. And then that's really just a stepping stone to the 1 or 2 day or 3 day event. So the 1 or the 2 day or 3 day event is sometimes a few $100s or a few $1,000 depending on the promoter. And there's more people in there, so they're easy, if you will. And this is where the cult-like thing happens. So if you had like 300 or 400 people, now, by the way, I have to share from specific example and specific experiences. We had one of those run through an organization that I was personally with. And the very first session, we had 300 or 400 people at a national convention. It was a smaller, growing company. It was the first convention. The leader put on a kick butt. I mean, it was great. It was great. We welcomed him back. He came in and promoted, and it wasn't free for us. I don't remember what we paid him. We handled the expenses, but he had the opportunity then to sell the next course to everyone else, which I thought was kind of slimy. We paid you to come here, and then you used us to put you in front of 300 people and endorse you, and then you sell them your next course. I'm like, wow, we were just used. But, you know, it was good. If it's going to help our people, okay. We all went to this phase 2, which cost $1,500, I'm going to say. I know that number's not accurate, but just imagine $1,500. So now 100 people come in for $1,500, and then we get into the all-day, all-night, breaking you down, trying to figure out what's wrong with you in your past lives or what's your whatever, you know, all your fears and all your things. And I'm sitting here watching tears streaming down people's faces as they are being emotionally cracked open. And as they're being emotionally cracked open, I'm saying to myself, wow, this is not good. You're opening up wounds on people I really don't think you're qualified to close. I really don't think you're qualified to handle this, because now we're getting serious. And I literally watch people that were at the top of their game, fully functioning, selling, sponsoring, recruiting, doing all the things we did the right way, into all of a sudden they couldn't make a phone call. Never again. I won't mention her name, but she right now runs a very successful self-development program. She obviously put herself back together, but this one woman who we worked with when she was earlier on that went through this process broke down completely, and we couldn't get her to make a phone call. She wouldn't even get out of bed. It was almost like she had a mental breakdown. And that was when I stopped endorsing, if you will, the second and third phases. Now, I have to share with you this. We did have some people that went through the second and third phases. They would say, on the other hand, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like, my life has totally changed positively because of this. Where my fear was really, David, was the challenges that we experienced with those people that were not able to handle that level of whatever we want to call it. These were unlicensed practitioners. They were breaking people open. They were exposing things that they couldn't put back together again. And I don't want to say this the wrong way. But I do know they did it mostly for their money. They did it mostly for their money. It was part of the business scheme, and these people were collateral damage, and they were only doing it for the money. So all of this love, hope, and help and all that sort of stuff was really just a front, and maybe they were themselves schizophrenic, but the reality was is it was really very damaging. Cult-like for sure, and in your specific instance, which breaks my heart to hear, and you have to live with it, but the reality was is sometimes it could actually lead to bankruptcy. It could lead to, in some instances, death. Now, we all know that there's a whole bunch of complex reasons why whatever happened to that gentleman happened to that gentleman. But we do know also that the seminar course, which is that self-development cult-like following, was definitely a contributing factor. And I think anybody looking from the outside in would probably say that just the same. And I think those are fair statements, and I'll let you clean up whatever I just said.
No, you didn't leave much to clean up. I'd suggest that anybody who's interested in how this stuff works, that they read about James Arthur Ray and his cult in Sedona, Arizona, that ultimately led to the deaths of 3 people, voluntary deaths of 3 people who chose to cook themselves to death. It's quite an impactful story and very reminiscent of what happened to my ex's son.
Right, so it's James Arthur Ray.
Yes.
And if you do a Google search and you type in Arizona and you type in sweat camp or sweat something or another, you're going to see it.
Sweat Lodge.
Yep, Sweat Lodge.
Sweat Lodge, yeah. Happened in 2009. And there's a very insightful, I think it was one of NBC News magazines that provided some in-depth coverage on it. Ultimately, those deaths were ruled homicides, as they should have been.
Right, exactly. So this was a great example of a gentleman who was dynamic and charismatic and probably pretty talented, who believed in his almost godlike, if you will, ability to affect change in people, and they would go into these sweat lodges and literally sweat them out, and it was almost like a religious experience, cult-like certainly for sure, and for some people that like that stuff, it's great. It's the most aspiring, wonderful, most positive thing, life-changing thing that they ever had. But this guy obviously didn't realize that when people said they couldn't breathe, that they really couldn't breathe. And 3 people wound up dying. I believe he's faced some jail time. I believe he's out now. I know that I'm on his email list because I was kind of interested in the transition. And where his life goes now, I would imagine he is extremely remorseful at every level for what happened to those people, because usually I can't imagine anybody not caring at that level. But although this example is to the extreme, it probably happens a little bit more frequently than most people realize. And in the same aspects as well, the other thing, too, is the concept that what if it doesn't happen to that extreme? Look at all the people that are hurt as a result of those things. So I'd say let the buyer beware, and certainly be aware that these things can potentially happen. And at least this way you know, so you can steer away from it if you're that type of person who just won't find that wonderful positive experience. Okay, so David, I know there's probably not a whole bunch of things that have happened over the last week or so that we've spoken, but is there anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, just a couple of add-ons to what you said about Mr. Ray. He actually got a 2-year prison term for, I think it was negligent homicide or something similar to that. And he's unfortunately back in business doing the same kind of stuff.
I don't know what to say. You would think that at that level they would have probably said you can't do that stuff anymore. You know, like they do when if you're go ahead.
I can't say that he's using sweat lodge therapy,
right?
But he's using all the other direct or deceptive and indirect methods of persuasion and mind control to capture his adherents. Right.
Wow. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to add? Because we're going to keep this one down to a little bit less than 30 minutes. But is there anything else you want to add? Oh, your website and anything else you want to refer people to. Oh, and I'm sorry for interrupting. You sent me a movie that we put on MLM.news. So for all those people that are looking for educational stuff, go to MLM.news and find that little movie. I forget what it was called. I can look it up now. But what was the name of that movie? It was the one with the movie. It was a short movie about the cult-like following that happened.
Yeah.
What is the name of that movie?
I can't remember the name of it. I'll try to look it up before we go off the air.
I'll look so you can talk.
Okay. What happens in the story is this gentleman inherits an MLM downline from his parents and recognizes right away the problems that there were with that particular business. And in the course of trying to convince his family to stay out of it, he lost his family and his community and was basically left in isolation. And the reason that I forwarded that video to Peter is because it's very reminiscent of exactly what I experienced. And I even remember feeling totally alone when I finally got out.
Right, and it's called Grand Zero. And we put it on MLM.news on the fun and educational stuff page. So if you go there, you'll see some other fun and educational stuff. But I'll share with you, if you go take a look at that movie, it's called Grand Zero. It was a really good movie that indicates some of the challenges. Then they did it in a fun kind of a way, but these are real-life situations that many of us, unfortunately, can say, you know what, this is exactly what we kind of found a lot of people do in the MLM world. Okay, so David, do you have a website you want to give us as far as in reference to? I know you're building one as well, so I don't know if it's ready yet, but if you want to give us a website or any contact information?
I'm happy to take contacts from anybody who emails me. The email address is info@scam, that's SCAMM, scam with two M's, .org. The website has been up, and unfortunately the guy that developed the site abandoned me after I paid him off, and it's currently under redevelopment by another web designer. So it's not up right now.
Got it, but the email address still works. So info@scam with two M's.org.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, and we'll have that, and whenever you have the website up and running, we'll get people to be able to see that cool stuff as well. All right, David, we're running out of time. Thanks for being here on the radio show. Thanks for your story. Hopefully, people hearing that story is going to help, let people avoid tragic situations like that. They'll be able to proceed with better caution. I appreciate you being here on Building Fortunes Radio. We'll catch you next week if your time is available, and we'll see you then. Thanks for being here, David.
You've been listening to Building Fortunes Radio on buildingfortunesradio.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check us out every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the designated Building Fortunes Radio segment with Peter Mingils. Be sure to check out the buildingfortunesradio.com website for our featured segments. It's been our privilege to have you listen in. At Building Fortunes Radio, we wish you the success you deserve and are willing to work for. So spread the word, tell a friend, join our newsletter, and go make a difference in your world.